All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm Kim Spangler, and this is Tim. Tim is our executive director. We are with ARC of Alabama. We are a service provider, and we have chapters all around the state, 30 to be exact. And those chapters all provide different services. A lot of those services are residential care or day programming. We have employment support. We work with people out in the community. We do different waiver supports as they come in, and we even provide, some of our chapters even provide early intervention therapy. And so we are all about trying to help improve lives and foster independence and just make the world a better place by including people with disabilities. And those disabilities can be anything from physical to intellectual to developmental or some combination of all three. And so we love what we do, and we love particularly helping families with tools and resources and various kinds of supports going forward. So what I want to do is kind of bring families into what we're calling, or what has been called, the age of self-determination. And I think that's really awesome, because back in the day, 50 years or so ago, that wasn't a word. Nobody really talked about it much. And there was a lot of isolation and segregation going on within this population of people with disabilities. And so the first webinar that we did kind of gave you the history of the disabled population and the world that they lived in, and how the attitudes have changed throughout time, kind of highlighted different ways and different ways to think about it, different perspectives people took, and realizing that we're not necessarily in a fight for inclusion age and stage as much as we were, but now we're in more of a, we can do this, let us show you our self-determination age and stage now. And I think that's really cool. So going forward, our next one that we did was basically all about self-determination and how to utilize something called the life course tools to live your best life, whether you have a disability or not, and create some really good forward-moving goals and plans to live as independently as possible that way. And so we kind of walked through those life course tools at the last one. And then this one is going to be all about supported decision-making. And then our last one is going to be self-directed services and person-centered planning, how to utilize a person-centered plan with self-directed services on any of those waivers. That's about as self-determined as it gets right there. So I can't wait to be able to put all of these webinars in one package. They'll be on our website at the end of the day, and then we will kind of just go around the state with our town halls, meeting and greeting and giving people updates and listening to concerns and giving information and getting feedback from parents like you or individuals with disabilities. So that starts up in May, and we'll be hitting one place in each region for about 5 months. And we'll come out with that calendar soon. So let's get started. I want to make sure I'm not waiting, or I'm not letting anybody in. Tim, you see anybody in the waiting room? I think we're good.
Yeah, not this time, no.
Okay. So supported decision-making. What supported decision-making is just a fancy word for something that we've all been doing for our entire lives. When you have a question and you don't know the answer, nowadays, you're either going to Google to find the answer, or you're asking somebody you know who might know about that topic to kind of give you some advice and some support, right? So it's a really old idea that's become a really new catchphrase called supportive decision-making, but it highlights what people living with impairments can do instead of focusing on what they can't do, right? So If you happened to run into some money, say you got an inheritance and it was a really large sum of money, most people would want to consult a financial professional, right? Get some advice on what to do with that money. That is just another example of supported decision making. Same thing is true when you go to purchase something online. A lot of people will read those customer reviews before they make that purchase to get other people's input and ideas before they buy it and have it shipped. That's supported decision making. So supported decision making is nothing new as a concept. It's just that we're giving it a name and practicing it with people who have intellectual developmental disabilities so that they can learn and grow, even if we might not like or agree with the decision that they've made. For example, I might not like Colby, my son's name is Colby, getting a tattoo. I might advise him to think long and hard and be careful about that because it wouldn't be my favorite thing. But Colby remains in control of his life by being able to make that decision even against my preferences, right? So Colby has every right to make that decision and get a tattoo if that's what he wants to do. Does that make sense? So we're going to move ahead with that in mind and talk about rights and how this all came about. So guardianships and conservatorships remove rights. So anytime there's a guardianship or conservatorship at play, there is another person, someone else, making decisions about money, about where they live, whether or not they marry, who they live with, you name it. That decision or the control of that person's life gets put into the hands of another person, a different decision maker, right? So when that happens, you can see both sides of the story here. Guardianships is on one side, and the alternatives, whether or not that is a power of attorney, supported decision-making team agreement, a medical health care directive, all those things maintain some rights, but a guardianship or conservatorship take away the rights. A guardianship and a conservatorship is also pretty costly. They range anywhere from $3,000 to $6,000 to go through the court system and have that take place. So it's not cheap, but the other alternatives that I just mentioned, support decision making, those are all incredibly affordable. All you have to do is get something notarized, get the document notarized. And if you know a notary, that should be easy to do, right? The guardianship and the conservatorship is very restrictive. Basically, any and all decisions have to go through the hands of the guardian or the conservator before anything gets allowed or can happen. So the other ones are much less restrictive. And then the guardianship or conservatorship removes that decision-making power from the person who has the disability, and a lawyer is required. And that part, the lawyer being required, is no small task. For example, if somebody wanted to move from one county to the other or one state to another, you would have to get a lawyer involved, even with a guardian at play, to be able to allow that person to move. So something that would be simple and a pretty easy decision for you and I, when a guardianship is at play, it is not that simple at all. You've got to go through the courts for all those big changes in life, and somebody else ultimately gets to decide what you do or don't do, or what's allowed and not allowed. So the other alternatives, all you have to have is somebody that is witnessing to the agreement and it gets notarized, and then you just move ahead. You don't have to go through the court system every time there's a big change in your life. So the anatomy of, okay, there we go, is that the process is instigated. The judge is in the middle of all this. And then you have to go through evaluation, and then you have to go through the court system, adjudicate, right? big piece of that when guardianship is involuntary, in other words, somebody who has an intellectual or developmental disability may not even realize or understand that a guardianship is taking place. The outcomes or the key actions are to isolate, eliminate, and liquidate. That's when a guardianship is involuntary and things go awry. That's like the bad, dark side of guardianship that not a lot of people talk about. But guardianships are often abused. And this is how that looks, that little box chart on there. So the most important thing for supported decision-making, really the only thing that is required, is that somebody is able to understand who they are. For example, if it were my son, I am Colby Spangler, and I want to have other people help support me in this way. That's it. If they can understand who they are and that they know they are asking for help and support, that is all that is required as far as capacity being determined, right? They don't even have to verbalize that. So it's really important to remember, just because someone is maybe not verbal does not necessarily mean that they cannot communicate. There are always ways to find communication, whether it's through eye gaze, whether it's through technology, whether it's through body language, pointing. There's different ways people communicate. So always make sure that all of the efforts toward communication have been exhausted before you jump into something as restrictive as a guardianship or a conservatorship. All right. So the way this got started was a sweet girl named Jenny, and the Justice for Jenny case swept over the media in Virginia and went all the way to Washington, D.C., and it got talked about in lots of different hearings and lots of different committees in D.C. through Congress. And this is something that the House Select Committee on Aging put out in their statement for the first committee hearing on trying to reform guardianship after they heard about Jenny's story. The typical ward has fewer rights than the typical convicted felon. A ward is what someone is called when there is a guardian making decisions for them. So the typical ward has fewer rights than the typical convicted felon. By appointing a guardian, the court entrusts to someone else the power to choose where they will live, what medical treatment they will get, and in rare cases, even when or how they will die. It is, in one short sentence, the most punitive civil penalty that can be levied against an American citizen. Those are really strong words. So to me, if you understand, in short, what a guardianship is actually doing, it's nothing to be taken lightly. It's a very, very serious consideration. So after that, after the Justice for Jenny case went all the way to Washington, D.C., people kind of started paying attention to guardianship abuse and started understanding a little bit more about what a guardianship or conservatorship actually meant. It even made its way to Hollywood. Y'all remember Britney Spears, right? She got a lot of attention for her case with her conservatorship. Now in Alabama, a conservatorship is only about the money and the guardianship is about everything else. But in most other states, a guardianship and a conservatorship is the same thing. So Britney Spears' conservatorship would be much like a guardianship here, but also about her money. Hollywood came out with a movie, not that I'm recommending it, because it's kind of a dark comedy and I'm not sure that it's PG. But if you want to see a dark comedy and Hollywood's take on abuse of a guardianship, you can watch this movie, I Care a Lot. Michael Orr, do y'all remember the athlete that made a movie with, oh gosh, what's her name? Can't remember her name, but y'all know who I'm talking about. He ended up playing football.
Sandra Bullock.
Sandra Bullock. Yep, that's it. Thank you. he did not understand the terms or the conditions of his conservatorship. And so that went to trial. I don't know that that's been finalized yet, but the same concept, the same idea happened here in Birmingham, Alabama with the Golden Flake heiress, Joanne Bashinsky. And you can Google that story. So media coverage in DC have brought a lot of attention to the idea or the topic of guardianship abuse and the need for reform. And with that came supported decision-making. I believe there are 31 states with active advocacy trying to get their supported decision-making laws in place. 18 at this point have passed laws for supported decision-making, and Alabama is one of them. And at Alabama, we have the Colby Act. This is Colby, and this is the representative from Tuscaloosa, Cynthia Almond, who sponsored his bill alongside the Senator Arthur Orr and many others that brought it to the House, and it was passed unanimously in August of 23 last year for our state with lots of help from ADAP, James Tucker, Nancy Anderson, our DD Network with Daryl Powell and Holly, our USAID with Linda Russo, and Colby's very own supported decision-making team member who supports his advocacy and engagement needs, and her name was Corey Merchant. So lots of people, and you can see a lot of them here, some of Colby's team members, some of the lawyers, Lorenzo, Graham. All of these people had their hands involved in one way or another in getting this act passed. So now in the state of Alabama, we can have supported decision-making team agreements that serve in lieu of a guardianship or conservatorship. And all you have to do is name your team and get it notarized. And if anything ever comes up in a legal way, you just present that team agreement to the courts. And the capacity of the person with the disability is recognized as such that they can make their own decisions with the support and help of these people. So that has been a wonderful thing. We're still trying to get the word out, and we're excited about it. All right, and then Colby's dream team of supporters is a big part or a big piece of how this works. Couldn't do it without them. Pretty important piece. This is what his team looks like, plus one more. We just added Colby's brother Camden because he's about to turn 19, and that's the age of majority in Alabama. And Camden kind of helps out with Colby's education and training decisions for now. So the way we put this team together is unique. There's no right, let me preface this by saying there's really no right or wrong way to make a team of supported decision makers. I think Colby has a really big team. I don't know that all the other teams around the state look like Colby's. I think most are probably about half the size, if not smaller, with 3, maybe 4, 5 people tops. But I wouldn't want to grow a team too big, like more than 12 people or so, because then it just gets overwhelming and difficult to manage, right? But whatever works for you, wherever your support needs are, and however that works out for the people that you know, your support network, the people in your neighborhood, the people in your church, the people that you see every day when you go to the same place to get gas, the people who know you really well, and the people that you trust to help support you and steer you in the right direction, those are going to be the people that you're going to want to talk to about, hey, will you be on my team? Can I name you as a supporter? It doesn't obligate anyone to anything legal. It doesn't create any liability. It's 100% voluntary. And you meet with these people face-to-face or online or in person as often as you want to throughout the year for the purpose of extracting information that they have that you need and asking them questions when you want to make a decision in an area that they happen to be an expert in. All right. So for Colby, what that looks like is this: Heidi Martin, his healthy living support. She happens to be the lead ER nurse at UAB Highlands, and she's in charge of the staff in the ER. She's known Colby since he was 4 years old. We met in preschool at church. And when Colby was going through a lot of different medical issues, I would have concerns or questions about things that the doctors would tell me. And I would bring those to Heidi because I was her child's preschool teacher at church. And so we just developed this natural or organic relationship throughout the years as Colby would grow. And I could tell that she was just really good at breaking down that hard to understand information we were getting from the doctors and translating it into a way we would understand and be able to make decisions with. So when we started thinking about Colby's medical needs, we immediately thought of Heidi and went to Heidi and said, hey, we're thinking about making this team. We think you would be a really good fit for the healthy living support on Colby's team. What do you think? And then we just repeated that same process. We asked Colby's same age friend, who's known him since he was 2 years old, Christian Woodard, to be his same age peer mentor or consultant, somebody that Colby can relate to and has known for life when those things come up that he doesn't want to talk to a bunch of adults about, right? We have a neighbor right down the street, Scott Riley, who is a CPA, but works in insurance, but also understands budgeting and finances really well. And he's always talking about money. It's just kind of his thing. And he's known Colby since Colby was probably in 4th grade or so. We just developed that relationship with him. And he is Colby's financial consultant, so to speak. Colby goes to him with questions on budgeting and saving and what to do when he comes into money or doesn't have enough, right? And makes plans that way. And then the same thing is true for each other person. Sandy is his social and recreational support. Lorenzo runs the Is Able Center, and that is Colby's spiritual support. We share a lot of the same beliefs with Lorenzo, and we could tell that going forward, because Lorenzo himself has a disability, was really good with relating to Colby on a level that none of us really could, and coming at it from a spiritual perspective was really helpful. Amy is Scott's wife, and like I said, they are our neighbors, and every time we would go out with the Rileys, Amy would be the one to say, hey, did you put on your seatbelt? Hey, did you use hand sanitizer? Let's go ahead and make sure we wear our helmets before we go on that bike ride. So she just kind of always had that natural nurturing, let's be safe wherever we go and whatever we're doing. But she also was just kind of looking out for everybody's best interest. So she's Colby's safety living support, and she helps him with smart technology at home. And if things come into play in the future, they're also running a business on the side where they help with mobility and accessibility equipment. And so that's another way to boost Colby's supported decision-making supports within the safety of his environment. And Corey Merchant is just a natural at advocacy engagement. In fact, we met her at an advocacy event years and years ago for the Board of Education meeting down in Montgomery. And we became quick friends because she has a son with a disability as well. And even though her son's a little bit younger, we're kind of walking down the same road and haven't shared a lot of the same experiences. And I could just tell that Corey and I and Colby and her son all got along and wanted the same things out of life. And because I saw how good Corey was at advocacy and engagement, asked her to join the team. She was happy to. I want to explain to y'all that this process was not quick. All in all, for us, because we had so many people we wanted to be involved, probably took us about 6 months to develop Colby's team that way. I was nervous asking these people at first if they would support Colby in this way, because I thought it was a big thing to ask. I thought it was a big deal, but nobody said no. Everybody immediately said, yes, we'd love to help. Let us know what else we can do. And they were all on board instantly. And so I think if you know you're asking the right people and you understand that you are not asking for a huge time commitment. You're just asking for their support and their guidance along the way. And you kind of set up a plan for what that's going to look like and put that plan in front of them. I think most of the time it'll be easy for them to say yes, and you'll experience the same thing. So I put together a little acronym down here, and it can kind of help you remember what's involved with creating a team. So the T, the first part, is to tell others what you want your life to look like. So none of these people are just freely offering up their advice to Colby on any given day. Colby's telling them what he wants his life to look like at least once a year, if not more so. So he meets with these 10 people. He meets with each one of them one time every year. So they each, the way we did it, they each have a month assigned to them. And so he knows in January, I meet with Dad, and Dad's going to talk to me about my goals and what I want my life to look like for transportation or employment. That's kind of the way Dad supports Colby. And then I know, or we all know, that in February, we all have a group team meeting. It's coming up this coming Monday. And we're all going to get together, and we're all going to eat dinner, and we're all going to celebrate Colby's birthday. But Colby's going to tell us what his plans and ideas and goals are for this coming year. And he's going to break it down for what that looks like in each person's role. And he's going to say, Heidi, I need to lose 10 pounds. And I think I need to drink more water. And Heidi's going to help him make decisions that way. All right. And then he meets with each person. Like I said, one month gets designated to each person. And then we wrap it back up at the end of the year with another celebration type get together, but it's not as formal. It's kind of online, all of us together, wishing each other happy holidays, Merry Christmas. And we talk about whether or not Colby met the goals in each of these areas. And if he did, what's next, and congratulate him. And if he didn't, what we can do better next time, and keep going. So that is all about how you tell other people what you want your life to look like. That's the T. All right. And then there's the E. And the E stands for educate people that you trust on the ways that they can support your decisions. So with Colby, the way that he does that is utilizing the life course tools. And that's just a set of tools. We went over them last week that kind of help guide conversations and pull information out of the person with the disability and into the hands and hearts of the people on your team, so that they can get a better idea of what your vision for your life looks like. They can get a better understanding of what your support needs are. They can get a better understanding of what your daily schedule typically looks like. But that's just educating others, that the people that you trust, on better ways that they can support you, because they need that kind of information if they're really going to help you make decisions in your best interest, right? And then the A is for assign. You assign action steps when they agree to be on your team and join you on this journey. You can't just say, okay, great, we have a team, and then not do anything. You have to have a plan. You have to strategize together. So you're going to literally assign them action steps, and that's part of the life course tools as well. But each team member is going to have 1, 2, maybe 3 action steps that they take every time they meet with you. That they're going to have a guided conversation, they're going to provide accountability, and they're going to have a follow-up to see what are you doing? How are things going? Those are all part of action steps that get assigned. For example, if it's Lorenzo Brown and Colby said, I want to join this ministry team, then they're going to sit there and talk about the steps you have to take to join this ministry team or go on this mission trip. And Lorenzo is going to have some accountability with Colby and follow up on that to see if he's actually taken those steps, right? And then M is for measuring your progress intentionally and consistent. If you get to the end of the year and you've done really well with 2 or 3 people on your team, but not so well with another person and those goals, it's not always necessarily because of the person who is supporting you. It might be because you've got to roll it back and decide, well, maybe my goals were too big. Maybe my goals were too easy. Maybe I just didn't have the right goals in place, and kind of measure your progress every year with every meeting so that you can see if you're making that progress or not, and then make changes as you need to or as you see fit. All right. And then once you've got your team together and you've got your plan together, you're going to utilize all these resources. You're going to use the life course tools that we went over last week. If you haven't seen that, go take a look. You're going to develop natural supports. We sent that workbook out to everybody. That's a very big part of creating a team of supported decision makers. In fact, I think it's probably the most important part, because if you're not out in the community and you're not meeting people and you're not going to a place where you have consistent friends, where as soon as you walk into that place, they recognize you, they know your name, they know who you are, and you're included, then it's going to be very difficult to activate your team in a way that is meaningful. You don't want any kind of surface relationships. You want meaningful, natural supports within the community you live in, with people you can trust 100%. The only way to do that is voluntarily through natural supports. It just won't work with paid supports. It just won't. Now, I'm not saying paid supports are not important. They are, but that's just a piece of this puzzle. It's just part of it. All right. And then getting to know the people that are working within your community of practice. So if you are a parent or a family or a caregiver, Alabama is part of the community of practice. We have been since 2000, I want to say 2014. So we are actually, this is a national community of practice, and we are actually 14 members strong who can give the training and do this. I think ADMH is actually having a community of practice event on March 7th in Birmingham that we will post to our Arc of Alabama Facebook page, get more information on that. But this is the group of people who understand everything I'm talking about, who understand supported decision-making, person-centered planning, natural supports, and kind of bring new ideas and keep our state updated on all of that. All right. Then you've got to develop a meeting schedule with your team and stick to it. You can develop it, but if you don't stick to it, it's no good, right? So it's different strokes for different folks. Everybody's time is important and everybody's schedules look different. So since everybody's routine varies, you've got to talk to your team and determine the best way to meet with each team member. There's different ways you can do that, but you got to have that happen consistently for it to work. So some different teams that have utilized different scheduling strategies are that you have an annual shared calendar, whether that's a Google Calendar online, or that's a piece of paper calendar that you print, you make a copy and you print a copy for each team member, but you just share an annual calendar and you go through every month of the year and say, we want these things to happen with these people on these months. Another way is just emails, to send an invite to everybody and just say, hey, we're going to have this group meeting or this small group meeting or this one-on-one meeting on this day at this time, please come. The monthly rotation schedule works well. Phone tree reminders. If you've ever used a phone tree reminder, now the way that looks today is maybe a group me text where everybody gets on the same group text, right? And then there's always phone calls and snail mails and texts and stuff like that. So as long as you're sticking to a scheduling strategy and you're being really consistent with it, it should work out really well. So then you've got to create your team agreement. And if you haven't seen that, you don't know what it looks like, send me an email, send me a text, and I will get it to you. We put it into the Colby Act intentionally, but we left it wide open because we didn't want a prescription for an agreement. We wanted people to do whatever worked for them. So as long as it has these 7 things, then your agreement should be fine. You've got to name your supporters, whoever that is. It can be family members, friends, somebody from your church that you've known for a long time, but they've got to be named. And you might want to even create, and it says in the act, you might even want to create an alternate if that person can no longer fulfill their duty as a supported decision maker, then you've got a backup, right? And you've got to describe the way they're going to support you. You have to outline your decision-making rights for the person in charge of the agreement. So Colby's rights for making a decision in each of those areas of his life are described within the agreement. All right. So one thing that I've always advocated for is to utilize something that already exists within our ADA, and that is an accommodation for effective communication, and that gets defined. If that you can define that in your team agreement, you should be covered, because you can't really make a decision and be held liable to it if it was not an informed decision, and it can't be an informed decision if there wasn't any effective communication to begin with, right? So, for example, if somebody might be nonverbal and they're expecting a reply back verbally, that's not going to work. So you've got to find a way to effectively communicate with that person so that you can understand them and they can understand you, right? So whether that's technology, body language, whatever that is, the ADA has already created an accommodation where effective communication can be requested. So write that in, you're covered. Signed consent of the supporters and then notarized by a practicing lawyer. Doesn't have to be a lawyer, but it probably should be a lawyer if you want the course to recognize it. Terms and conditions listed. And I'll be happy to share that within, like through an email or whatever, if you want an example. All right, any questions? That covers everything. I think we are done. So the next one is going to be, like I said, person-centered planning and self-directed services. And we will get all of that out and hopefully even have a guest speaker on board if she can make it. But that covers the self-determination, supported decision-making strategies for tonight. Are there any questions in the chat? Karen, I'm going to ask you directly, and you can unmute yourself if you could still hear me. Or is Karen gone? She's not even here, is she? Karen, we lost you.
She's gone.
She's moving back to Alabama and trying to start her supported decision-making team. And I can't wait to see how that goes. I was going to ask her what progress she made. But I think that's it. If I don't have any more questions, we will wrap it up and I'll let Tim take us out on
Well,
it.
thank you, Kim, for all that good information, and thank y'all for being a part of this tonight and watching. And if you're watching this on a recording later, thank you for Googling us and watching us again. The next and final part of this series is on March 21st at 6 p.m. Please, the registration will be out if you've already registered for the previous ones, and be sure to be looking for that in your emails. If you've missed the first 3 of these series, you can find them on Alabama Care, or you can just Google supported decision. It'll be a YouTube video and it'll pop up. So look forward for y'all to do that. A few dates that some of you that are on in the virtual world, and Mr. Johnson that's still with us tonight. Our Advocacy Day at the State House in Montgomery is that March the 6th at 10 o'clock. Come and support. And if you have a voice or a concern, show up, and we'll be glad to send you in there and let you talk. Our Ability Day is April 17th, and that's a day where we're asking you to, if you're an entrepreneur or you work for an employer and they want to share some information, to please email us at the Arc of Alabama if you hadn't already received the registration, and we'll get it out to you. But other than that, thank you for joining, and we'll look forward to next month when we wrap this up and in the future for the town halls. So thanks a lot, Kim, and thank everybody for joining.
Thank you.
Good night.